Hi, I'm Dianne Ashton, Dr. Dianne Ashton. I'm a former professor of world religions at Rowan. I'm now professor emeritus, which means that I'm retired, but I can still do fun things like this that I'm interested in. My scholarship is really in American religion and in American Jewish history. So I've taught lots of classes on American religious activities and American cultural holidays. So I kind of have a broad base to talk from. About 167 BCE, we're talking.
Right.
There was, Judea was not independent. It had been conquered by Syria. And the king of Syria at that point wanted to do two things. One, he wanted to take the money for widows and orphans that were stored at the temple in Jerusalem, which was Judaism's most holy, special spot. And so that's where they kept the funds, the charity funds, and he wanted that money. But he also, because he was Hellenized as part of, that whole area of the ancient world had been Hellenized by Alexander the Great, and Greek religion spread. And so he wanted to impose that on Judea as well. So he wanted to reshape the temple. He put a statue to Zeus in the temple and totally enraged the Jews. So what happened was there was an uprising led by a family of brothers who came to be called the Maccabees because one of the brothers, Judah, the Maccabee, or Hammer, was the leader of the bunch. Their family name was Hasmonean, but they became, colloquially called the Maccabees because it kind of expressed their commitment to fighting the Syrians. And they won, which was a miracle. And they said, this is a miracle. And so they rededicated the temple to God, obviously. And one of the things that were typically part of the items in the temple in Jerusalem were large, tall menorahs, which remained lighted a light for every day of the week. And those lights symbolized the presence of God. So one of the things they did when they won and were restoring the temple was relight those menorahs. And those were oil lamps in those days, not candles. So that's how Hanukkah began. It's interesting because they're both celebrated in the shortest days of the year when it's dark and cold. I mean, even in the Middle East, it wasn't, days weren't as long as later. And especially for people further north in Europe, those holidays became really, or Hanukkah at least became one of those holidays where you really value lighting lights in the evening. Christmas has obviously a very different history. Christians celebrated the birth of Jesus in many different ways over the course of 2,000 years, as you can imagine, in different countries. But Jesus's birth is not the most important part of Christianity. It's his resurrection that's the most important part of Christianity. So the thing about holidays that are not the key holidays is that they have more room for folks to play with them, just to express what they want, to make them into things that are meaningful for their local communities and for their families. And that's really what happened with both Christmas and Hanukkah, because Hanukkah is not considered a major Jewish holiday. It's a minor holiday. the key elements that are involved with Hanukkah are lighting candles in the evening at home, and in the synagogue, there would be candles lighted in a menorah as well. And in the synagogue, there is a special prayer for the holiday that is recited on the Sabbath of Hanukkah. By the middle of the 20th century and continuing then, what we have are home celebrations for Hanukkah with families lighting the menorah in the evening, giving gifts to their kids. But I have to tell you, gifts, because there's 7 days of gifts now, remember. The thing about, when Christian kids hear this, they think, oh, wow, but no.
Right.
So you'll get, I interviewed a lot of people about this, and I have my own experience as well. So very often, kids will get like one night of presents that are like toys, and other things will be school supplies, pajamas, a sweater, wrapped up as a gift. And you eat foods that are fried in oil, because remember the story of the oil lamp that was lighted in the temple. So the important thing about foods for Hanukkah, doesn't matter what you eat, as long as it's fried. We have different kinds of foods that emerged in different parts of the world. In Eastern Europe, which is where probably a good 80%, easily 80-85% of American Jews trace their ancestry to Eastern Europe, or Northern Europe at least. They had a lot of potatoes. It's in December, remember?
Right.
And so they made potato pancakes. And so they're called latkes, and that's what you eat at Hanukkah, potato pancakes. In Israel, they have a lot of folks who came from other parts of the world, and they eat jelly donuts. So, which I think is actually better than a potato pancake. So, it's the fried part that's key. The other thing that's happening that was really, it began in the late 19th century and increased, was that religious schools would use holidays for pedagogical purposes. Elementary schools in the US do this all the time. Every time there's a holiday, it becomes a learning occasion, right? This is a teachable moment. And so Hanukkah becomes part of the curriculum in religious schools. And one of the things that happened probably by the end of the 1920s was synagogue sisterhoods would hand out cheap tin menorahs and a box of candles to the kids at Hanukkah, just to be sure that everybody had what they needed to celebrate the holiday. And by then, the Reform sisterhood movement, Reform Jews, they had approached a printer to develop a Hanukkah card. This was in 1926. And so he came up with one pattern, very simple, just a candle, a lighted candle on a piece of paper, basically a picture of that, and Happy Hanukkah inside. And the sisterhood sold it to their members. They used it as a fundraiser. And that was a huge success. So all the Hanukkah cards you see did not begin with Hallmark. They actually began with a movement by women within the Jewish community to promote the holiday by selling these cards to friends and family to distribute, to use, to send to their friends. I think that one of the things students are kind of surprised at sometimes is that all of these holidays will continue to grow and change. History keeps on going. And with Hanukkah and with Christmas, they've become even more commercial,
right.
and more events. People tie more kinds of events to them.
Mm-hmm.
Parades and synagogue parties, and so these are really beloved holidays, and people expand upon them. And because so much of it happens outside of the control of religious authorities, people can create